you know, just, oh, excuse me, want to dance? Ha ha, sorry.
Hello, Bhupendra. Greetings, Nepal. Welcome to the year 2020. My name's Gary Schwartz. I'm an actor, improviser, improv coach, and director. And I'm based outside of Seattle, Washington, in a little town called North Bend. North Bend was probably best known for being the location for the TV series Twin Peaks. And it's just about as kooky and mysterious as everybody says it is. And I really enjoy living here. Bhupendra, I want to commend you for this project Impronoun and introducing various improv teachers to Nepal, and commend you for being the very first person to bring improvisation as an art form to your country. I had the great pleasure last year of being one of the teachers that you invited, and I thoroughly enjoyed my time there. Your students and your players were extraordinary, great fun with a wonderful spirit and a willingness to learn. So I hope I made an impression, and that you keep doing it and we can keep doing it again. So you want to know how I got involved in improvisation. Well, I've always been a teacher, as far as I can remember. When I first learned how to do pantomime when I was about 13 years old and performed it all up and down the Hudson River in upstate New York, soon after that I started a class at my old high school teaching mime to other students. When I went to Hollywood, California, I got a job teaching mime at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. And while I was there, I was also interested in learning how not to be silent anymore, so I decided I would take a couple of acting classes, and one of them was an improv class. So the very first class I took was a comedy improv class. I didn't know anything about improv, and I went there. It was really a lot of fun. It was very kind of high pressure. The key was to be funny and to top somebody else's work, and to be as funny as you could possibly be. But then a friend of mine called me, this was about 1976, and asked if I could get some information on a woman named Viola Spolin, whom he had read just started an improv school in Hollywood. So I looked it up and went down to the school to check it out, get some information. I met one of her students who was teaching on her behalf, and all they had was a simple brochure. They really didn't have any information they could give me, but he said, if you really want to know about it, you should take the class. So since I was already taking one improv class, I thought I would take another, and went into the class. And the difference was amazing. The comedy was not stressed. It was a lot of fun, but at the same time it was also just very relaxing and easygoing. He would simply take one of Viola Spolin's theater game cards and read off the game, and we would do the game, and it was fairly enjoyable. And it was kind of a large class, I'd say about 16 to 18 people, and there were all kinds of people in that class, ranging from I think Viola Spolin's gardener, to a Jewish cantor, female cantor, an opera singer, as well as some well-known actors and beginning actors like myself. Well, one day Viola Spolin came in to watch this guy teach, and within about 10 minutes she just got up and said, "All right, that's it, you don't know what you're doing, get out." And to our amazement, she just fired him right there on the spot, and he left. Well, Viola Spolin came back in and started the class again. This time she was coaching, and the very first exercise we did was a mirror exercise. the mirror was something I thought I had already mastered, being a mime. I was a great imitator. But in this mirror, she was asking us to do something called follow the follower, which is where you sort of get lost on who's leading and who's imitating and who's copying and who's moving. And it so discombobulated me that I literally started to have a physical reaction. I couldn't control my muscles, and I was just in this kind of state of suspended semi-freeze. Viola was yelling in my ear, "Let it flow, let it flow." So finally she stopped, and she just said to the class, she put her hand on my shoulder, addressed the class, and she said, "Well, now you see this young man here. He just had a direct experience. He got to see his partner in the mirror without using his head." I kind of accepted that idea and thought it was a good comment. But then she said, "I suspect it's probably the first time in his life he ever saw anybody." Well, bells went off in my head, and I was always constantly hyper-vigilant about my behavior with people, and I was always monitoring how I was with people, and I thought that improvisation was the perfection of that skill, to be able to wittily take any information, manipulate it, and use it to achieve some sort of desired result. Well, this was completely different, and I realized something super important, and so I went up to Viola Spolin, never met the woman before, and first thing I said to her was, "I want to thank you, Miss Spolin." She said, "Don't thank me! Don't thank me. It's not me. Don't flatter me. Don't make me your guru. Oh, get out." And she was very abrupt that way. So that didn't faze me at all, and I simply said, "Well, Miss Spolin, I'm going to be your apprentice." Well, that stopped her in her tracks, and she looked at me and said, "Oh, honey," she says, "you don't know what you're talking about." It's a wonderfully long, involved story, I could tell, but it's on my website as a blog entry called How I Met Viola Spolin. So if you're interested to know the rest of the story, read that blog. How did I begin my career as a teacher? I was studying improv in Viola's workshop every Wednesday afternoon for about 8 years. During that time, Viola and I became really good, close friends. And that's also another funny story, but I'll save it for another time. But because I always was inclined to teach, especially something that was exciting me and something new, and I always was of the belief that if you want to learn something, teach it. I wanted to teach her work, but she absolutely refused. And it's partly because so many people had taken her workshop for many years over the course of time and taken 6 or 7 months with her and then gone off and started teaching their own version of what they learned from her without giving her any credit. And I think this is really something that was a cause of great bitterness and upset for her. So she absolutely refused. She said, "No, you can't teach. You can't go out and hang up a shingle. Everybody does that." And she didn't trust that I was going to be faithful to the work. So I kept at it, and I asked her over the course of years if I could teach her work. And finally, she relented in about the 8th year of my work with her. And she says, "All right, you can teach mimes and children." And she said, "Mimes because you taught mime, and space, which is a concept of the use of this invisible material to create not only objects but entire environments, was something that was very close to me and was an important element in improvisation. One that I might add is sorely lacking in today's modern improv practice: the understanding of space and the use of space objects as a fellow player rather than simply as a gimmick or a prop. And she says you teach children because children are the they will be able to teach you. They will be able to show you what they need without filtering it through all of the complicated hidden layers adults use to hide their inadequacy. Children don't have that filter. So you get to see immediately as a coach what they need in the moment, and that will help you as a teacher. And I recommend, if you want to teach improvisation, definitely you should teach children. Children are, and also Viola Spolin began her work with children. She developed all of her theater games to teach children the skills of the stage without telling them how to do it. She wanted them to discover each of the skills needed, and so she would house that skill inside of a game, and this is how she created her theater games. That way, the sense of discovery and the sense of ownership of understanding and integrating that skill would be the students rather than the teachers. Rather than imparting the knowledge, the student would come by it experientially. So she allowed me to teach mimes and teachers and children, which I did. Soon after that, she did also allow me to assist her in several of her workshops. And when she got ill later in her life, toward the end of her life, she had several strokes. I was sort of the designated person to go out there. She also introduced me to her son, Paul Sills. And Paul Sills, of course, was the man responsible for bringing her work to the world and creating a form of that would utilize her work and really become what we all know today as modern improvisation. He was the first and one of the founding members of Chicago's Second City, which was an outgrowth of an original group he formed called the Compass Players. And of course he had these amazing genius actors and intellectuals of the 1950s, Mike Nichols, Elaine May, Barbara Harris, Alan Arkin, all of these great people, Eugene Trubnik. What do I plan to do with improvisation in the future? Well, my goal is to introduce as many people as I can to the work of Viola Spolin. My belief is that improvisation over the course of time, very much like religion, has sort of fractured itself into various schools of thought, and although many aspects are hit upon that touch on Viola's work in improvisational theater out there in the world today, many people have forgotten the overall philosophy and underlying principles that Viola Spolin used to get her work out there. So because I had such direct contact with Viola Spolin, I'm one of the few people out there who have played all of the games coached by Viola Spolin herself, and I want to share that experience with as many people as possible, sort of remind people of the source material, because improvisation, as popular as it has become, has also kind of warped itself into being dedicated to create comedy or to create sort of this amorphous theater form called long form, which was begun by a man named Del Close, which was just an experiment he used in something called the group mind, which is when it was successful, someone asked him what was that exercise, and he just says, I call it Harold. And of course Harold has become sort of the foundation of long form improv. Now, I've seen a lot of great improvisational performers out there, so I'm not saying that the work is totally forgotten, but what I am saying is that improvisation as performed by these highly intuitive, super talented people is something that they came by through their own innate ability as intuitive performers. And Viola Spolin's method is the ability to communicate that exact experience to anyone, to awake and evoke your own personal genius, your own intuitive abilities, which some people have at a high level and perform it brilliantly, but everybody is capable of it, because the most direct path to get there is through the act of playing, through having fun. And when you're having fun, so many wonderful things happen to you. You lose your self-consciousness. You become so involved in the focus of the moment that nothing else matters. And that focus is the energy, the engine that drives all of your creative impulses. So this is what I teach and what I share. It's available to everyone. So anyway, I think I've rambled on quite enough. If you would like to know more about me and my work, I have several websites you can visit. One is SpolinGamesOnline.org, which is a free video library of these games being played and coached by not only myself but Viola Spolin in some great rare footage of her teaching. There's also my other website, which is called Improv-Odyssey.com, which is my work with using Viola Spolin's games as applied to business skills, communication skills. And so there's also another website called Spolin.com, which is basically just in honor of Viola Spolin. It has wonderful articles and material about Viola Spolin. So those three websites you should visit, along with Viola Spolin's granddaughter's website, violaspolin.org, which is a wonderful website that shows Viola Spolin's whole history, how she came up through the 1930s and through the Depression, her work with Neva Boyd and the Hull House and Jane Addams, and Aretha Sills, her granddaughter, is another practitioner of the work. So hopefully between her and myself, you can get a real understanding of who Viola Spolin was, how important her work is, and if you have any interest at all, I'm available to come to your country, your town, and do a workshop with you. So that's the end of my story. Again, Bhupendra, I look forward to visiting Nepal again, and keep up the good work.